What's going on today, YouTubers? We're going to do another edition of Walking Review. We're going to be talking about a custom knife, and this is the Insidious by Tom Ferry. So let's go ahead and jump in, go over the stats. It is a flipper, liner lock. We have a 3-inch blade of zephonite steel. I guess you would call that kind of like a modified Warncliffe style blade. It's been given a nice stone wash, kind of a light stone wash, just good at hiding wear. It's got kind of a futuristic look to the blade. I like that, with the really long top swedge and the way he did the tip. Let's see if I can get it to focus. Just a really well done blade shape, really useful. You can see Tom's maker mark there, and the other side is bare. So the handles, like I said, it's a liner lock. It is titanium liners. They've also been given the same stone washing that the blade has, so aside from hiding wear, it also matches and looks nice. Full carbon fiber scales here with a titanium back spacer and a carbon fiber pocket clip. So real quick, let's go ahead and jump into the good and the bad. The good, this is a really excellent flipper. The action is nice and snappy. It does right on caged bearings. And aside from the caged bearings, I was surprised to find when I took the knife apart, there's also a washer that sits between the liner and the bearings. So you have a little metal washer, then the bearings, and then the blade itself. And even with all that, it still manages to be fairly good on the tolerances. I love the clean lines because it's such a low profile flipper. You don't see it when the knife is open, so it almost looks when the knife is open like there is no opening method. You know, kind of like the front flipper. Once it's open, it doesn't really show the opening method. So I do like that. The fit and finish is perfect on this knife. There you can see the centering, and like I said, I've had this knife apart and put it back together, and that centering is still dead center perfect. You can see there, it looks like the bevel there isn't quite even. I think I did that when I reprofiled the knife. I put my edge on it because I did get this second hand, and the edge was pretty much butter knife dull by that time. So I did have to put an edge on it, and I think I may have inadvertently screwed up the secondary bevel there so that it's not perfectly even. I mean, it looks fine from this angle, and from this angle you really wouldn't be able to tell. It's just that tip doesn't look quite right. Anyways, moving on. So this knife is really lightweight. It's just under 3 ounces, 2.9 ounces. So for a 7-inch overall knife, that's really great. Like I said, the blade is 3, the handle's 4. One thing I'm not super crazy about is down here. It's a little bit busy with the hardware, in my opinion. You have 3 screws, like all within, you know, 1/8 of an inch of each other, and it just looks a little, I don't know, a little off, I guess. But it's no big deal. It certainly doesn't affect the functionality of the knife, and that is pretty much perfect. The lockup is way early on this knife, and when I first saw the lockup, I was worried that it might have some blade play, so that's the first thing I checked. This thing locks up so solid. Really solid lockup, even with that super early lockup. I've never really been a fan of the super early lockup. I know that a lot of guys and a lot of makers swear by it. in my opinion, I don't know. It's one of those things like, ideally, you should never need it anyway. The lock should never travel so far, even after 50 years of owning this knife, that early of a lockup should be necessary. But anyways, moving on. The carbon fiber is perfect. There's no voids anywhere. Just really nice carbon fiber, really well done. All of the mating between the liners and the carbon fiber is done. You cannot feel the transition at all anywhere, and you can't feel the transition between the liners and the back spacer either. So everything has been gone over and checked and double checked to make sure that it's done right, and I really appreciate that. If you guys had watched a previous video where I discussed a custom knife by Les Voorhees that was not gone over, and that can be frustrating when you're paying you know, premium price for a knife. Speaking of premium price, I got this for about 500 bucks. I've seen them go anywhere from, you know, the mid 500s up to you know, over $1,200 for certain models or certain one-offs, I guess, of this design. So getting back to the good and the bad, I really love the design aesthetic. I pointed out the way that the blade kind of looks futuristic. The handle is kind of like the opposite. It's just very graceful. You can see it's more like flowing lines rather than hard angles like the blade. And I do appreciate the way that they set each other off. You know, they're different, but they somehow work together. Ergonomically, this knife is fantastic. You can hold it back here like you would a normal knife, and this jimping is done really well. It locks your thumb in. You have just enough of a swell here to keep your hand back. Or if you prefer, there's a nice finger choil. You can choke up and get your hand like really onto that blade so you have total control. So just very, very well done ergonomically as well. I really do like that finger choil. I wish more knives would use finger choils. Even in this size, even though it's a smaller knife, the finger choil just, it gives you more options, and more options are never a bad thing. As long as you're not sacrificing, you know, too much cutting edge for it, I say definitely use it. So you have this low profile flipper. The action is really snappy. It's very smooth. This isn't a drop closed knife, being a liner lock and having such a strong lockup here. Like if this wasn't, if the detent wasn't as strong, meaning if the the liner lock hadn't been bent over far enough, I would definitely think that this early of a lockup wouldn't work. But because the lockup is so strong, it does work. So you're not going to get this knife to fall closed, but hey, I'm happy the way it is. It really does work. The pocket clip works really well. Normally I'm not a fan of the 3D milled clip. I think it's more of a nod to aesthetics than functionality. But this one, aside from looking nice, you know, even though it has that, I think, a little bit too much hardware going on, but it does look nice and it works really well. It has just the right amount of tension. I do like the oversized polished pivot screws he used. It gives it kind of a custom look while still being, you know, just a Torx screw. So that's good. This knife was really easy to take apart. This side, the locking side of the knife, this part does not move. So even though they both appear to be you know, movable screws, this one stays still, and this is the one that turns. So it was very easy to take apart, very easy to put back together, and just an overall really nice package. Just the perfect size, you know, 7 inches overall, not too big, not too small. a really useful blade shape. That tip is like, that is the perfect tip for like opening packages and stuff. And then you got plenty of belly here for slicing. I do like Wharncliffe blades, but I do much prefer the modified Wharncliffe here that has belly to it instead of just a straight line. So definitely kudos to Tom Ferry on that. Tom Ferry is a master bladesmith, so I definitely expected quality when I ordered the knife. I did a little research on him, and he's been making knives for a long time, and he's achieved mastery of his craft. You know, he's done everything you can do. I think he started out in fixed blades like most guys do, and I think those still fetch a pretty high price, his fixed blades. But you know, these folders are really just well done. For a fixed blade guy, he makes a hell of a folder. Let's see, can I think of anything bad to say? Aside from me kind of screwing up the secondary bevel there, there's not really a whole lot that I think could be improved on the knife. If he could figure out a way to do away with the little metal washers and just maybe use bigger bearings, because the bearings that he does use, the caged bearings that he does use, they're very, very small. Really tiny caged bearings. I mean, he's obviously the mastersmith, so far be it for me to tell him to change his hardware, but I think it would help out with the tolerances just a little bit. Not that these are bad, but they could be better. A la my Trevor Burger EXK Plus. But it's just something that, you know, I didn't want to just say this knife is perfect, hands down, that's it. So there's definitely things that could be improved, like if he could figure out a way to get that same solid lockup, maybe without it being so early, in my opinion, would probably be a plus. And yeah, that's about it. Maybe figure out something to do with this hardware so that it doesn't look so so busy there, especially when a knife like is this simple and this good looking. To turn it over and then see like screws everywhere down there, I don't know, I think it detracts a little bit. It's also a fairly thick knife. I'd say it's just a hair thicker than the EXK Plus, which I'm going to be doing a review on here in a couple of days, so definitely stay tuned for that. But it feels nice in the pocket. It's small enough so that, and it's thin enough this way. It's not super wide, so that it does ride well in the pocket. So alright guys, this video is starting to run pretty long, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. The Tom Ferry Insidious, a very nice knife. If you ever get the chance, definitely check one out, and I will catch you guys on the next video.